Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Fresh Out the Box. Takes a look at Nevermore from legendary TTRPG creator Ian Lemke. I am the board game guru and game master extraordinaire, Johananon.
It's me, Casualty CDG. I am the co-host of Fresh Out the Box, and I am happy to be joined again by Ian Lemke.
Hello, I'm Ian Lemke. Glad to be here tonight. I feel a little disconcerted. I feel like I should be grabbing my Expanse books. I'm starting to run the Expanse game, but that'll be another time. Tonight, I'm here to talk about a new tabletop role-playing game that I'm working on, which is Nevermore, a role-playing game of American Gothic horror, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a game of American Gothic horror.
What would the classes be in an American Gothic horror game? Like a child doll with knife?
Well, the classes are sort of broken into two parts. You're playing a normal, not a normal person. The player characters, ostensibly, though you could play it, more low magic if you want, as it were. But the player characters are part of a mystical order that are aware of the evils in the world and are, going and seeking it to destroy it wherever they can.
Very cool. I love that hidden magic setting where you're in the normal world, but there's just something right underneath it. It's I feel like everyone can relate to that. Once you start a new hobby, all of a sudden you start seeing that hobby everywhere. Or, there's always like a hidden world. Once you start a job, you start seeing things related to that job. So I think everyone likes that type of Harry Potter-esque.
I mean, and that's exactly what it is. There are places in this world. The world's pretty much the same as ours. Everything's basically the same. It's not crazy steampunk stuff everywhere. Though, I mean, as I have in the rap, there might be a little bit of weird technology here and there if someone were paying attention compared to our world. But basically, it's the same. But in the world of Nevermore, there is something called Aether. And Aether is what powers magical things and allows, horrors basically to exist, ghosts, vampires, whatever, what have you. And there are also places called Aetheros, which is literally of Aether, where Aether gathers and pools. And these are the places where strange things happen because the presence of the Aether in these areas allow these things to happen, hauntings or ghouls, all kinds of creatures of the night. So yeah, it's very much a hidden world, and Aetheros each have different effects, and one of the common effects is sort of like a forgetfulness or unawareness that the people who live there, just like a werewolf, slaughters people or whatever, and the people who live there just kind of shrug and well, that just happens, right? They go about their daily business, or even just forget about it. They quickly forget about these things. Sleepy Hollow, I think, has one of the best quotes that describe what I'm going for, and I use that repeatedly on the website, things like that.
What's the quote?
The quote. Oh, yeah. I kind of set myself up there.
I was also waiting. I was also waiting for the quote.
The quote is rather long, but it goes, "Certain it is, the place still continues under the sway of some witching power that holds a spell over the minds of good people, causing them to walk in continual reverie. They are given to all kinds of marvelous beliefs, are subject to trances and visions, and frequently see strange sights and hear music and voices in the air. The whole neighborhood abounds with local tales, haunted spots, and twilight superstitions. Stars shoot and meteors glare oftener across the valley than in any other part of the country. And the nightmare, with her whole ninefold, seems to make it the favorite scene of her gambles."
Yeah, hell yeah. That does do the trick. You're right.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Keeping poetry alive in the modern world.
Well, I mean, and that is one of the things, I mean, this leans really heavily into specifically American Gothic horror. Whereas, I mean, certainly there will be elements of European, Victorian Gothic horror. I really wanted, in thinking about games I wanted to do, I realized that there really weren't any games set in that kind of period in America.
Yeah.
There's tons of stuff in Europe or Britain or, Victorian this and this by gaslight and whatever, but not in America. And there was a lot of cool stuff going on, a lot of cool people around. So yeah, that's what I decided to do, is do a game based on that. And the stories are meant to very much reflect these stories. And in fact, the Gothic writers actually exist in the world, and their books and such can sometimes even be used as clues to deal with resolving an Aetheros or something.
That's what I was going to ask next.
Cool.
Is you mentioned interesting characters in the world. Do you have you used any historical characters in the lore that you've taken some freedoms with and kind of beefed them up?
I actually haven't done a lot with that yet. Yes, I will say yes. There is some. I'm gonna save that though for now. Certainly Poe is an important feature. The core setting for the game is going to be Baltimore City, for a number of reasons. One, it was short of New York, it was the largest port of import for immigrants to the U.S. anywhere in the country. It was a massively growing city at the time, and there was a lot of stuff going on there. Also, you get up to New York, you're sort of getting into New England, and that kind of gets into Lovecraft country. And while we're 1888 is the setting, it's not 1920s, it still gets a little close. So I kind of didn't want to fall into that. And
we have like a sci-fi evil horror, or even maybe an anti-hero Nikola Tesla to look forward to?
Oh yes, absolutely. In fact, one of the adventures I've done for it, they come across an article that features Tesla. So
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to hear.
No, this is all good news. Yes.
There is in fact one of the. I mean, it being Victorian era, Gilded Age, you do have to have some steampunk elements in there. And you were talking about classes, and one of those are the etheric engineers, who actually use aether to, rather than steam or whatever, they use aether to, make strange and unusual devices. So there could be some Tesla connections there as well.
That's really
and there are people outside the order.
Almost an artificer sort of role.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah,
they can make. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
This is almost like the flip side of that Cthulhu coin, because like whenever you go to this time period in America, it's always Cthulhu. You know what I mean?
Right.
And this is it's a nice change of pace for sure. It's I'm very interested to see more.
You asked about classes earlier, and one, you have your calling, and your calling is sort of who you are, in a sense of, are you a combatant, are you a caretaker, are you this, are you that, and so some of your stats are based off of that. But probably the closest thing to a class are the different cabals within the order. And one is etheric engineers. There's the disciples of the Emerald Tablet, who are basically alchemists, and again infuse aether into potions and such to make strange effects. You have ravens and rooks, who are sort of two sides of the same coin. The ravens deal with the upper class and are good at influencing people and things like that. The rooks, of course, deal with the more criminal elements and lower classes and are good at thievery and that kind of thing. You have the scholars of Mu, MU, who are basically very good at finding information and knowing whether something's truthful or not, that sort of thing. Soldiers of Mithras, who are warriors who have magical abilities of defense and attack to be able to take out spirits and things like that. And finally, Theragists, who are your wizards, straight up, your spiritists, who can banish spirits and control them and speak to them and things like that.
Oh, that's pretty sick too. I think I would go second to last, fighter class.
Yep, Soldier of Mithras.
I would go probably either the etheric engineer or the Thurgist.
Yeah.
I probably have to read Raven and Rook too, because it almost to me sounds like sort of a jack of all trades or rogue kind of class, but it's like an upper society rogue and an underworld rogue. I think that would just be a fun read.
Yeah, the Ravens are almost, you can almost think of them as bards too, but yeah, in the sense of that they have some abilities that sort of can influence people and inspire people and things like that. Where the Rooks are all about darkness and shadow and getting through things that are locked and into locked places, sort of thing. So yeah, they both have a little bit of roguish flair, but
yeah. See, both of those sound cool.
That's
one high society, one low.
That's a nice spattering of choices there. I like it.
There may be others eventually if the game does well, but right now that a few ideas for some things to add to that. But I'm super excited about it. The other thing with putting it in Baltimore, I didn't want to go complete Southern Gothic either. You put it in the South, Atlanta or something. It's going to be, that's a thing. Where Baltimore's nice, mid-Atlantic, you can go to the South, you can go to the North, and you've got a lot going on in its location. And of course, it was the last place that Poe visited and died.
Speaking of different locations, is that something you have, or is that something you plan on doing in the future? Doing some famous locations from the time, like New Orleans in the South. Of course,
I would love
huge haunted. That New Orleans would be covered in ether spots, right?
Right.
Wells all over the place.
Yes, I would absolutely love to do additional cities and that sort of thing. Hey, if the thing does really well, I'd love to explore Europe and the West. I'd love to take this and do a sort of Wild West.
I think that's really cool, because there is some sort of history aspect to it, do you find yourself just going down like rabbit holes of
Oh,
Baltimore history or 1800s history late into the night?
I disappear into those rabbit holes all the time. I'm supposed to, thinking I'm supposed to write something, and 2 hours later, I've just been reading, and I have like stacks of books now of 1800s this and all kinds of things that I've been, and all the all the Gothic stories I've been reading, and so I've been kind of immersed in it. And yeah, the history is just incredible. There's just so much to explore.
Yeah, it's definitely
Any
cool. The Eastern stuff is stuff I don't know a lot about because me and Gary are both from the South, so
Right.
it's not really our wheelhouse. And so it's cool to see like just a different aspect of American horror for sure.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Baltimore too, so that right what right. But even beyond that, there were a lot of good reasons to place it there. I mean, I lived like 4 blocks from where Poe died, so. And my weird little trivia: my mother's high school boyfriend owned the bar where he had his last drink. So,
cool.
or at least supposedly had his last drink. There's some dispute on that, but
It's like every bar owner in Baltimore says that. Try to prove it now that he's dead.
exactly.
So have you come across any stories, anything that sticks out to you in history, anything that you had to include because it was so amazing or so funny or so treacherous, anything that was just you had to put it in the book?
Oh God, I'm sure I did. You're stumping me.
I'm sorry, yeah, for anyone else watching. I didn't prepare Ian with questions. I'm just pulling
this is
these
completely off the cuff.
straight out of my pocket.
It's a great question, and I know that I have. I mean, I just come across stuff all the time that I'm like, oh, that's cool. I need to do that. I mean, the house. There is an adventure in the quick start that I'm just finishing, and the house in the quick start is loosely based on a house that is actually in Baltimore, in the Baltimore area, and that has some interesting history. So it's not the story of that house, but it was definitely inspired by.
Right.
So
Cool.
yeah, there's a lot of things.
To the point of write what you know, Jahan and I have always talked about doing a Houston-based tabletop game, just because it's Houston's got 5 million people, almost 6 million people. Surely, if somebody buys the game from Houston, just a couple of people, you make your money back. That's a big city.
Yep, it's true.
Tell that to Scarlet Spider series, I guess.
Yeah, that was a real. It's too soon, Gary. It's too soon. I'm still upset about that. But yeah, this I don't know. It sounds very personal to you. It sounds like this has a lot of you in it.
Yes, it does, and yeah, it's got a lot of me in it. I mean, I think other than Changeling, this is the game that speaks to me as an old goth kid, and growing up reading Poe and that sort of thing. It's just it's very much comes from my soul, I guess.
It's excellent.
We've got fans in the chat who have been to the Edgar Allan Poe Museum in Richmond, Virginia, and they're huge fans, and they're looking forward to the game. So I guess that was my next question. Has Poe been, is that an influence for you coming from Baltimore, being down the street? Did you guys get like hammered with Poe in school, or is that something you enjoy?
No, not really, and it didn't. I mean, it was always brought up in school, of course, but I don't recall ever getting hammered with it. I mean, I used to wait for my bus home from my job for a while, like literally right across the street from his grave. So yes, it was always there. It's sort of this presence that was always around. But it's one of those things that as you get older and you learn more about things, the guy wasn't really a great guy. A lot of the you find out a lot.
Turns out most people are.
Exactly.
Most famous people were. Yeah, I mean it's the same with us in like the Alamo. That stuff was everywhere, all the time, and like you hear about like Davy Crockett and blah blah blah. But he was a sociopath that liked to torture animals and like
Every single founding father was like a horrible piece of crap.
Yep.
Yeah, you learn some things as you get older. You're right.
And that's one of the things I'm trying to do with the game is not hide from that. Because I struggled with this for this is one of the first things I really struggled with about the game, even more than the rules. It's like, how do I deal with a game setting that is set in a period that is so awful? Not open at all to anyone but straight white men. So that was part of my thought for having the order, the esoteric order of the Illuminists, that all of the player characters are a part of, was to have sort of this space. The order doesn't care who you are. They don't care what color your skin is. They don't care who your partner is. They don't care, because they're fighting evil things. What they care about is how good are you at taking out ghosts or other horrible spirits or werewolves or what have you. So it's sort of it creates a space for the players and the characters, so that they don't have to feel awkward in that time period. I say these things are out there. I have a whole section on how horrible America was, and also how that influences Aetheros and where they come from, and why, despite the fact that Aether itself is sort of neutral, I guess you could think of it as the Force or what have you. Aether itself is a neutral thing, but where there's an Aetheros, they almost always go bad. It's almost always universally a bad thing, and they tend to form around places where horrible things happen at some point or another. Massacres, murders, all that kind of cool thing.
And that's what we call a teachable moment.
Yep.
Yeah. It sounds...
Well, speaking of it, yeah, good.
Oh yeah, that's a really hard thing to do with games, is create that safe place for players, because you don't want anyone to be excluded from the game. Obviously,
right.
We all strive. Everyone that I know and that we know strive to make TTRPGs an inclusive environment, but at the same time, acknowledging how horrible that time period is. It's a really tricky balancing act, for sure.
It is, because you don't want to gloss over how horrible the things are that are going on.
That's its own issue.
You almost want a chance to be able to do something about it and to stop it rather than ignore it. But you also, that's not something you want to put a spotlight on, and you don't want to make people feel uncomfortable, and you definitely, it's a sticky situation. But I think that tracks back to fantasy settings as well. Fantasy settings, I think when we were growing up, they had, slavers were in every setting. You were always seeing people taking slaves, and that has faded away. And, slavers as a bad guy is great. Everyone hates a slaver, right? We can all get on board with killing them. And so you're right, there's this tricky balance between wanting to kill the worst people in the world and also not wanting to put any attention on them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I feel one of the best examples I always like to use for the balancing act is what they did in the show Cthulhu Country, or Lovecraft Country, where they just take all the work of this horrible racist man and they turn it into a story of black empowerment, and it's like the greatest thing I've ever seen. And like that's my favorite example.
And that was one of the things with the time period too, is that the height of Gothic writing was really more in the 40s, mid 40s and such, 40s, 50s. Though technically American Gothic goes later into the 1880s, which is where the game is set. I did not want to set a game pre-Civil War. I did not want to go there and deal with that, and I did not want to set a game even right after. 20 some years later, characters, a lot of them may have been young when the Civil War happened. It moves it, and also there's a lot more. If you want to go with realism, though, I say flat out, I don't. If you want to have a Native American doctor, who went to Johns Hopkins, that's fine. Do it. It's your world. This is a different world. But also at that time, you were having a lot more doors open for different people. I mean, like the first African American lawyer joined the bar in Baltimore. I forget what the year was, but it was late 1800s. But yeah, then little things like that I work in the stories all the time. Like that came from one of the stories I wrote for the game. But
That's a cool one. Yeah, that's a character you already want to protect.
right,
So
it's just an anecdote, but
it's already
there,
baked in. Perfect.
Yep. And having little historical moments and teaching a little history through the game is something I definitely like. I do throughout adventures stuff, little sidebars of just about the history. Okay, the library. Well, what's the library? The Enoch Pratt Free Library. It was founded here by this person. But just to give you a little bit of real history to go along with the game.
Do you use any of those building layouts as your grid maps in the book?
I haven't done maps yet, so I'm not exactly sure how maps are going to be done. We're not that far along. I'd say 80% of the writing is done. I've gotten a bunch of art, which I think you have some that we could show.
Yeah, there's some popping up. I have a little slideshow running.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know that.
Not sucking.
But yeah, so at this point, I mean, I'd say I've got a fifth or a sixth of the art. Once the Kickstarter funds, that's going to be part of that, and that's already worked in. So
that's a cool thing about using historic buildings like that is you could have an artist rendition of that building in the book, and it's the actual building that you're really going to.
Yep.
And same thing with the map inside is this is a blueprint of the building. If you could find a simple enough blueprint that wasn't super complex.
They have entire folders full of maps of buildings and locations.
Well, this one's my childhood home. Yeah.
That's so cool to be able to draw from that.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we're already talking about where the game's at. We've talked a lot about like the setting and that kind of thing. Tell us more about the game itself. I have
rules.
I'm looking at the character sheet right now. I know that it involves cards.
Yes.
And that's about all I know so far. I'm excited.
Water. That was exciting. Okay. So yeah, we've talked about the setting, but we haven't even talked about the rules at all. The basics of it are that you have 4 qualities, each of which is connected to a suit of cards. You have Cardia, which is your social skills, and that's hearts. Corpus is your physical, type skills, and that's clubs. Psyche. Spades, which is your intellectual knowledge skills, and then Pneuma is sort of the weird one, and it's diamonds. But Pneuma is sort of willpower and practical knowledge, things that you learn through doing more than just reading a book. So as examples, things like art, engineering, medicine, bride, sailing, survival, that kind of thing are Pneuma skills, where Psyche is more things like history, notice, research, science, that kind of thing. So anyway,
I like that. The learned skills versus practice skills. We're always looking at smart ways to try to figure that stuff out at a table. That's a good way to do that.
Yeah, and sort of just personal willpower as well. Pneuma is used for too. But so you have those 4, and those are rated generally basically 2 to ace, based on the cards. In this, to get rid of the kings or queens are better. Kings and queens both are crown cards, and they're both worth the same value. So, and generally when you're it's as I said, we use cards. Underneath each of the qualities, there's a list of skills which apply to that quality, and you can technically cross fields. I don't know. There might be a situation where you might use Psyche with firearms or something. I don't. If a weird situation comes up, but generally speaking, you're using the quality that it's listed underneath. And then those skills range 1 to 5. And when you're trying to do something, it's pretty simple. Straight up, you make a test. You draw a number of cards equal to your level of skill, 1 to 5, and you're looking for either equal to or under the quality value. So if you have if you have an 8, you're looking for 8s and unders. If you have 5, you're looking for 5s and unders, or of the same quality. So say you're shooting someone, and you have firearms 3, and you would draw 3 cards. I'm just going to go ahead and draw a few here just to try and give a good example here. Okay, so say your skill was 5 in Corpus, and you're shooting someone. I'm going to go ahead and hold these up. This one would be a success because it's a clubs, but even though it's over the number. Diamonds, but it's a 3 if you can see it. I don't know if anybody can see it or not. There we go. There we go.
That's under your 5, so that's a success.
Yeah, that's a success. And then if you had a 5 of clubs, it's both. And if it's both, you get what's called fortune. You get a fortune token, which you can spend right away. You just throw it back in the fortune pool for an additional success. So it could theoretically be 2 successes. And then you're trying to hit a particular target number, which I call risk. The narrator assigns a certain risk to any act that you're trying to do. And say, okay, well, that jumping across that pool is, that stream is risk 2. So you need 2
and
successes.
So that risk is sort of our classic target number that we're used to from seeing in games. And in this system, it's your risk.
Perfect. Yeah, it's the number of successes you need. You then have a lot of things that can modify that. You have grit, which is which you start out base with 10. Some characters might start with a little bit more or even less. And grit keeps you from taking damage, hit points basically. While you're losing grit, you're not actually hurt. You're just strained. Using your oomph up. You can also spend grit to buy more cards. At any point, you can spend the grit to purchase as many additional cards as you want for a particular test.
Do you have to call those out before you draw them?
Yes, you have to say, okay, I'm going to spend 3 grit, and before you draw any cards and look at them.
Like drawing from the deck of many things, you have to state how many.
Yeah, you have to say how many grit you're spending, if you're spending any. And there, of course, are advantages and cabal gifts and all kinds of things that give you extra cards. The other thing is you're not ever allowed to play more than 5 cards. So if you get, even if you draw 10 cards due to grit, you can still only play 5 of them.
Now, I know there's like an infinite possibility for a system like this to get really convoluted, but is there anything for like doubles or triples success? 2 of a kind, 3 of a kind, anything like that? Or is that just getting into like way too meticulous of splitting the cards up?
I thought about that, and it was in there at one point. I was doing something with that, but it just wasn't working the way that I wanted it to. And it's sort of represented there in the same suit and number. You're matching both. So that sort of gives it that card game element to it. And if it's an opposed test, obviously just both sides play. Whoever has the most successes, one takes away from the other. The one who wins has however many successes they have left over.
And are you always drawing from a full deck? Are you shuffling back in? No, okay.
You discard. You keep a discard pile, and then when you pull your last card, you reshuffle.
Ooh, that can get really interesting.
Yeah, and though there are some mechanics in the game, like fortune can do a lot of different things. Like I said, you can spend it right away for that instant automatic extra success, or you can keep it. And if you keep it, there's all kinds of things you can do. You can buy extra successes later. Like you could spend multiple fortune to like if you get 1 success, you can increase it using fortune. So if you needed 3 and you only got 1, you could spend 2 fortune and move it up to 3. You can reshuffle your deck at any point. That's one of the things you can do with fortune. There's reducing time and things like that. Those are all the things.
Does that fortune go to like a community fortune pool? Is that for the whole party, or does it just stay personal to your character?
It stays personal to your character. There's a pool that they're all pulled from, and there's actually a maximum amount in that pool. 5 per. There's 5 per player goes into the pool. Now, the thing is, when you spend fortune, any other time when you immediately get it, it goes to the game master, the narrator, and it becomes Doom at that point, and the narrator can do pretty much the same kinds of things with it as the player.
This is the Ian Lemke that we love, is the one who designed The Expanse that just gets more and more dangerous when you roll sixes.
I didn't design The Expanse. I have to
Okay.
say, I didn't design it. I was a little involved. I was one of the original writers, but blame Steve Kenson.
Blame Steve Kenson. Of course, it's Steve's fault. But things getting dangerous. The game master having the ability to play, to interact, to have some dice on his side to change the odds. Those are the kinds of things that we like to see that really spice up the game, that make the game master feel like he has a little bit of say and a little bit of input. In the same way where we like games where you can use a stunt, where the game master reveals information to you. And the game master's not ready to give you all of the steps of his clues, but he does it anyways, because, that's how the game works. We like challenges for the game masters and players like that, and the game master getting Doom is always something we love on this channel.
Yep. No, it's fun.
All of our viewers have the ability to spend free channel points to give him Doom points at any time for any game we play. That's just a house rule we have.
There is something a little similar to the churn as well. I can't say I wasn't inspired by it. It works differently, but basically, if the fortune pool at any point runs out, if all the tokens are gone from the pool,
oh no,
bad things happen.
Yeah.
So, your doom falls upon you, and there's a good aspect to it in that the narrator has to throw some tokens back into the pool, but it can shift the scene pretty significantly. Things can change. New enemy. It's a little different than the churn, but similar concept, and it can change the story. At that point.
We love the churn. The churn changed our life, and we've just recently started a Fantasy Age campaign that we're 2 sessions into, going on 3, and we're trying to figure out when and where and what we call the churn, how we fit it into Fantasy Age.
Yeah.
I at this point, I'm so sold on it that I would put it. I would want something like that in almost every game. I just
Same.
think I love it that it's just sort of hanging out there, and it's.
Yeah, we love it's great when you roll this huge roll, you roll a crit, and you're super stoked, but you know that there's a ticking clock in the background, and that's what you get for your success.
Yeah, last night they wouldn't stop rolling 6s in the drama dice. Like, they just kept doing it. I was like, why is it? I need to put a thing in here.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I do like that a lot. Similar to a lot of games, once you run out of grit, you sort of start taking damage conditions, which, you affect you in different ways until you're dead. I made the game fairly hard to get killed outright. I went with a very different tack than Call of Cthulhu and a lot of other horror games, because I wanted the characters in these stories to be the protagonists. They are the heroes, sort of. Whereas they may go through a lot, and they may suffer for it, and they may suffer permanent effects for it. They don't. They still continue forward, generally speaking. And not that you can't get killed. You can certainly get killed.
No.
But it's not designed as a player killer. It's meant to be a story, not.
You're a little more heroic and a little less human.
No, I wouldn't even say that. I mean, I definitely want the characters to be human. In fact, the way I deal with courage and things like that gets very much into being human. But it's just that I don't necessarily want them to just get wiped out. I've seen a lot of horror games where it's just expected that, half or third of the party will die,
It's actually a popular design mechanic for a lot of games, is like very, very lethal, and sometimes it's fun.
Yeah, it is.
Sometimes. But sometimes, especially if you want a campaign, it can be a little tedious.
But yeah, I'm looking more at Gothic horror rather than slasher modern horror. You know, and Gothic heart usually, someone they live through to the end. They might be a little worse for wear, but they live through to the end.
Speaking of worse for wear, you said you might be doing something with the courage. Is
Yes.
that something that weighs on you in the end?
Yes. Well, I'll go to courage. Courage, you have a courage score similar to grit, generally starting at 10, can be more, can be less. But as you encounter horrific things during the story, you lose courage. And once you run out of courage, you start taking psychological conditions that affect you. To avoid losing courage, you have what's called hardening. And it's basically whenever someone is gaining or losing courage, it'll be one of four types. Law, and again related to the different suits. There's loss, violence, self, and horror, which are sort of self-explanatory. But I'll give some examples here. Let me make sure. Violence, of course, is straight up, seeing either being attacked or seeing something done to someone. Something minor might be, not very much, up to, if you kill someone, you lose a lot of courage, actually. And it's modified by how close they are to you. That's identity, which I said self, but it's actually identity now, is things like breaking a promise, or someone breaking a promise to you, breaking a vow, being betrayed by someone. So you lose a sense of your identity. Loss is basically losing anything from a personal possession to a limb, or and then of course horror. Straight up werewolf, ghost, ghoulie, whatever it is coming at you, and you take horror shock. So you have these four types of hardening as well. You have a different rating in each one. Again, 1 to 5. And so whenever you take take shock, which is losing courage from something, you can make a test to resist that particular thing using your hardening. The thing with hardening is, it sounds great. They want 5 hardening and everything, right? No, because there are side effects for having high levels of hardening as well, because as you become hardened to something, you become less human.
That's very Changeling, with the way the weird works.
I hadn't even really thought about that, but yes, it is. I stole for myself.
You stole for yourself. Hey, one of my absolute favorites, Changeling, for sure. So I saw it for sure. I love the scale, how the more you get, it doesn't necessarily, it's not, you get stronger, but you also lose something in the process. And that's just interesting. That's just interesting to play with.
Right.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, this all sounds great with the how the horror works, because, you can take hit points all day. A lot of my games tend to gravitate towards horror just on accident because I have a sick mind. And
Same.
hurting your players physically with like violence and like gunfire. It doesn't have, like, sometimes they'll get close to death. They'll have like an adrenaline rush, blah blah blah. But like, you really got to take away like their hope, in order to really make them afraid.
It makes for a really great game master tool, because there is more you can do to somebody besides hit them with a hard stick. There's a lot more you can do to a person to hurt them. In fact, sometimes hitting somebody with a stick doesn't do nearly as much as psychological damage does.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then once you get through all of your courage, if you still take more shock damage, you then, every character has a weakness. Again, there's 4 of them. Which fit in with the card suits and go into the various play mechanics, but I'm not going to get into every detail here. But there are 4 different weaknesses: cowardly, delusional, melancholy, and what is the last one? Wrathful.
Interesting.
And so when you get through, once you actually run out of courage, you start suffering from your weakness. First you have a minor amount and then a major amount, and each have different effects, some of which are kind of role-playing, and some of which are actually physical. And there's actually each one also has sort of a benefit as you hit them. Like just trying to think what. Oh, like cowardly. At the first level of it, you suffer some penalties with anytime you're using any card, anytime you use Corpus, but you also can't initiate any attack. You can defend yourself, but you can't initiate an attack. And then, but you also get a +1 card to any evade test because you're cowardly and you're running away. Melancholy, you can get to a certain point and you don't take any more shock because you're just like
that
whatever.
one's you, Jahan. That one's got your power.
Well, you get a. I'm sorry. You don't. It's not that you don't take any. You get a bonus card to any shock test. But anyway, still.
I like how you were able to break all of the human insecurities down into only 4 categories, and you either did a great job or all of those are just real personal.
I don't. Yeah. I have toyed with, and again, this is one of those things. If the game does fantastically well for some reason, and there's a player's guide or something, I might add 4 more. But I felt that captured most of it. At least there are things that are going to slip through those cracks. But
yeah, I think our viewer Vampire Bites liked it a lot because they tipped us 400 bits. While we were talking about this part.
Hey,
thank you, Vampire Bites.
All right.
No, I actually really like all of those. Those sound really cool. And, I can even see how, in a horror movie, oh, that guy had that one, when they, go off the handle because they can't handle it anymore. They start getting all angry and short with everybody, and they just create, it's just really cool that that's baked in. It's, not easy to do.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier you have your calling and then you have your cabals, and you get to choose from 2 weaknesses based on your calling. Each calling has 2 that you can choose from. So yeah, it that does affect that. And I was going to say something there, but I completely forgot what it was.
That's okay.
I was going somewhere. But yeah, that's how that works. I guess the last thing on there is the sight. One of the things the Order does is trains everyone in being able to perceive the Aetheros and Aether. And you actually have 3 skills under that. There's Locus, which allows you to perceive places, basically examining an Aetheros. Materia, which is objects. Is this a cursed object? Is there a spirit in it? That kind of thing. And then Spiritus, which is actually perceiving spirits, or if someone was possessed, or even a werewolf, you'd be able to tell, there's something not right about them.
Is there any hope for players to become werewolves or vampires?
I don't have that baked into the system at this point. Might that show up eventually as a thing? Sure. but
the Ether is just such a cool setting, and its ability to corrupt people. Certainly it is. If it's corrupting basically everyone around it. I like the idea of being able to play a freed monster. Someone from the Ether who wants to help close the horrible portals, or someone who was affected and lost their family or something.
Right.
It's such a cool setting, and I think it lends itself to that type of almost reel it back a little bit, but almost like a Hellboy type of agency for hunting evil.
Yep.
Where there could be a handful, a couple of folks who aren't humans that were trained, that went to class. I think that's, for me, my mind goes there.
And I definitely want to have I'm not going to devote a ton of time to it, but I know there's some people out there who might want to do a more traditional Gothic horror story without the player characters having any mystical abilities at all or anything like that. And that is just super easy to do. All you do is strip the Cabal out, and there you go. Just don't, don't use the Cabals, don't give the Cabal gifts and all that, and there you go. You have a normal Gilded Age character.
When you close the Ether portals or seal the wells, is there a boon that the party gets? Like, this is the boon of the well that gives you all a plus something?
Not currently, but I like that. I might have to give you a credit.
Hey, I will take it.
No, that's actually a kind of cool idea. That is actually one of the, I think one of the most unique systems I have in the game is called Revelations and Telltales. Um, Throughout the story, you sort of label key clues as telltales, which of course coming from Telltale.
Right.
And as you get telltales, fortune tokens are added to the fortune pool each time you get one. And generally, they need to be things that you have to do a little work for, and you actually learn something important about the background of the Aetheros, how what happened there, that sort of thing, or who the people were, that and such. But when you actually find the Aetheros, because sometimes it's a matter of finding where the place is. Like something's going on, something's happening somewhere, but you don't know exactly where it is. Or you might be doing a lot of research before you go there. This house up here has
In
issues.
this setting, you don't have cell phones and walkie-talkies,
Right.
and finding it's a little more difficult than flying a plane over and looking for the mystical fog.
Right, but you might, or it might be a town that's the next state over, so you might want to do research on it before you're there. But that aside, when you finally enter the Aetheros, at any point once you're in there, you can attempt what I call a revelation. This basically represents the fact that your character knows more than you do about this world, right? You don't know everything, all the lore of the Aether and everything, and nor can you. Nor should you.
Just because my character has a 4 intelligence does not mean I know calculus. It doesn't work that way.
Right, and and what you do is you pull those fortune tokens back out of the pool. They don't spend like normal fortune. You pull them out, and you get to play one card for each fortune token, which can be as many as you've amassed. And generally, I say a story should have anywhere between 6 and 15, telltales. Probably around the 8 to 9 range in general. And then you can make a test trying to overcome the rating of the Aetheros, yada yada, which you probably know because you've looked at it at that point. And if you succeed in that test, when you see or read about or whatever the core of the Aetheros, what the source of it is, you'll recognize it, and you will know what you need to do to solve the problem, to resolve it. Okay, we've got to kill this guy and put his corpse to rest, or we have to get that magical relic and destroy it, or whatever it might be. And you'll know what it is. You'll know. It also has additional effects. The rank of the Aetheros is reduced by 1 automatically because Aetheros have a rank, just like qualities. It'll reduce the Aetheros by 1. And also, if you have any additional successes, you can spend them to ask questions or take doom tokens away from the narrator. You can basically, if you got a bunch of successes on your revelation, you can just pull a bunch of doom tokens.
That'd be really funny.
They go back into the pool. You don't get them, but still, you're. So that's a sort of representing your character's aha moment. Okay, I got this figured out. I know we've done enough research at this point. We know what we need to do, and
when the unknown becomes known, it loses some of its power.
Power, right? Exactly.
I can already see what our channel is going to do with this. I'll spend everything but my revelations to take back 3 or 4 doom from you, and then you will immediately get 3 or 4 doom back from the channel.
They'd like to give me power ups. Last night they almost killed the entire party because they were powering me up too much. It was fun.
I almost got eaten by a troll.
Really did.
Yikes.
So this.
What were you playing?
We're playing Fantasy Age.
Oh right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A normal encounter with a troll on a cliffside turned into a death-defying battle hanging from the cliffside, which I didn't see coming. It was pretty fun.
Okay.
But you keep, yeah, I did enjoy it a lot. You're talking a lot about the Aetheros, so it sounds very interesting, and it has like a rating, that kind of thing. And you talk about entering the Aetheros.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't really go into that, did I? So Atheros can be any size. It could be a room in a house. It could be the entire house. It could be a city block. It could be an entire town. It could be a mountain valley. It could, they range in size, and the size doesn't have anything to do with the power. You could have an incredibly powerful Atheros that's really small, or a weak one that's really big. And sometimes they shift depending on the nature of the Atheros. So yeah, they have a rank, which the rank of the Atheros makes it more difficult to have a revelation. It also it sort of caps how powerful an entity within the Atheros can be. There are entities that can break that. There are special abilities, but generally speaking, if you know this is a rank 5 Atheros, you're not going to encounter a creature that's above rank 5 there, usually. And then each Atheros also has a manifestation, or multiple manifestations, which are special abilities that Atheros have that affect everyone within them. And I mentioned like forgetfulness or acceptance, or entropy. Everything is breaking down and crumbling within the Atheros, and things like guns or any mechanical objects have a tendency to break, which means like the narrator can spend a doom token to just, oops, your gun broke. And that sort of thing. There's horrors, like there are just monsters around, a place where there's monsters around every corner. They might be minor monsters, but they're just everywhere. I'm trying to remember some of the others, but you get the idea. Each one had mists. There's just mists everywhere within the Atheros. Everything's
love that, because I know that part of your design plan going in had to be every Atheros can't be closed the same way, or else this game's only going to be fun 2 or 3 times.
Right.
So yeah, with the Atheros, and is that something you have, I guess, written into the adventure, or is there a table in the book that kind of lets you roll the Atheros?
You can roll it, or the intent is to design it. To make it up, because I don't use dice generally. There are a few things I use cards for random stuff, but generally it's just a list of various types of Atheros and their effects, and of course you can make up your own. But yeah, I have like I don't know, 15 or 20 different types of manifestations that you can have.
Perfect.
That's a lot. Yeah. So that, I don't want to understate it. It sounds like the coolest thing ever. I really like the way that's set up. It sounds, I don't know, I want to like play one. Like right now, that's what I'm feeling.
Well, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Maybe not right now, but I'd be happy to do one with you sometime.
Oh man, that'd be so fun. Yeah, no, I really like the setup of the Atheros. It sounds like this one thing just kind of becomes this whole world unto itself, this whole adventure unto itself.
Right.
I don't know, it's kind of inspired, man. It's a really great idea.
Most of the ones I've done so far have been, there's one that takes place in a whole mountain valley where there's a little village and everything, and the whole area is in Atheros. Another one's just a mansion, just a mansion in the grounds of the Atheros. But yeah, I was trying to... there's like a forgetful... lunacy, people go mad. People just start going mad when they're in there. Somnolence, people tend to sleep a lot.
Man, Ian, you are just making my wheels turn for writing. You had talked about if it does well, wanting to do something, different settings around the country. Man, I'm so inspired from where I live. It's an old. I live in Taos, New Mexico, and it's old. It's old. It's been around since 1200 and inhabited the whole time, and it's just full of ancient legends and stories, and there's ghost stories for the Wild West for days and days. And being able to tie those in, I think you're inspiring me to want to write a Western setting for this. Here's the Western adventures.
I desperately want to. But I really wanted to go with East Coast, Gothic horror, but one that has been done. You have Deadlands, you have, there's a number of Wild West horror games out there. So I didn't want to do that first. But But if this expands into that, great. I
Having the
absolutely.
option to go there is
Sure,
really
yeah.
yeah. See that,
Yeah.
and you're absolutely right with the first setting. Yeah, I couldn't agree more
If you
because
go Wild West first, then you become that Wild West game that's now on the East Coast. Like,
Right,
oh.
right.
yeah, and you're not going to be. I mean, there's one weird Wild West game, right? Like right now, the Deadlands is the one, and
There's a
if
few
you're
others though. There's at least two others.
it's like the Coca-Cola of weird.
Yes.
There are more. It's the big one. It's the Dungeons and Dragons of Weird Wild West. And so yeah, to make a new setting, I think it makes a whole lot of sense to come in to Baltimore, Nevermore. The whole theme of the setting just feeds itself. It including the Raven as a class, the Rook and the Raven. It's the book is full of flavor. And it's one of the things Jahan and I look at when we look at all these different tabletop systems. Of course we look at the art, of course we look at the system design, but we also look at flavor. Does the book read like a superhero book the whole time? Is it making me feel super with its word choice? Is everything laid out in a way that feels superhero-y?
Right.
And Nevermore, for sure, the way you talk about it seems like everything does tie back into that American Gothic, back into that Poe. In a really beautiful way.
That is the intent. I definitely want each story to have those feelings and evoke those emotions and just all around ambiance.
When the rule design itself can feed the title and setting, it's just that's exactly what a good game designer is looking for.
I admit that for the name, I Nevermore was my original working title for it, and I was like, I need to come up with a different.
I
name.
love it.
And just after a while, everybody was like, you should just call it Nevermore. It's what it's based on.
Yeah, it's such a good name.
Yeah, it's a good name. I like it.
There was a game that we play tested called Streets of Peril. And it was like a fantasy, like 1400s grim, dark, low magic setting. And I just thought that Streets of Peril was just not the right name for it. Streets aren't really a thing. You've got like cobblestone pathways back then. The peril didn't sound right because that makes me think that like ninjas are going to jump down in a back alleyway and like we're going to start fighting. And Streets of Peril to me was just so Streets of Rage. It reminded me of the 90s of arcade beat 'em ups. And so maybe the title's not important, and maybe it is, but I think Nevermore is a way better title than Streets of Peril.
Well, different game.
Yeah, so we've heard about the system. We've heard a lot about the ethos, which I'm actually really excited about. We haven't talked. So, is there a lot going on with like the Aether itself? Obviously, that fuels a lot of the character classes, and to a certain extent, a lot of the creatures and whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Aether is going to be, at least at first, very deliberately left to be a mystery. What exactly it is, exactly where it comes from, I'm not going to spell that out. I have my own ideas; they're even written down, but I kind of don't want to like just let that out of the box initially, and I think that sort of codifies it too much almost. I think it being something of a mystery, even for the narrator, is a little.
You do not need to explain the midi-chlorians to us. Just let it be magic.
Please, I wish that word had never been uttered.
Don't we all? I think even Lucas probably. But anyway, yeah, that's a great example. I don't want to codify it.
Yeah, we are okay with space magic, right? Each and every one of us set aside realism to play a tabletop role-playing game. It's
right.
Okay that the magic doesn't have an exact explanation on day one.
But there are going to be explanations of there are going to be theories explored, and one of these theories is that is a multi-universe theory that some universes cross over with another universe that has Aether, and so it can leak into into our world. When our world crosses over the world that as Aether, then that's a possibility. I mean, and I even say in the book, like our world here probably has some Aether in it, and thus the occasional ghost sighting or whatnot. But then it's fleeting, right? It's gone. But you don't have a Theros. You don't have these places where it builds.
Yeah, it doesn't like take over the mayor and like force everybody to dance on the street. Yeah,
right. The etheric beings there's going to be a lot of question about that. Those two, as to whether or not they are actually ghosts of those people, whether the Aether is permitting an actual ghost to appear, or is it something else that is making itself appear as a ghost. So there is questions to exactly what it is, and whether those are there, whether a ghost is its own thing, or whether it's actually an etheric entity that just mimics a ghost.
I've never considered that as a possibility, and that's pretty chilling, bud. That's pretty terrifying. That's very uncanny valley.
That's the deeper horror that it gets into at points. That there are things that beyond your typical Gothic horror story evil out there. That are
I've always had this theory that ghost sightings are all facial pareidolia, however it's pronounced, where it's not a ghost of a person, but the human mind wants to see a face in clouds or in shadows or in the darkness. And so when you're trying to comprehend what that etheric creature is, the easiest way for a human to comprehend it is to try to turn it as close to
give it a face.
To try to give it a face and limbs, yeah.
Right. I mean, and these entities might be able to do it themselves. They might be able to make themselves... And they might be able to read, minds or whatever, or who knows what they can do. But, to basically be a doppelganger of that person in some form. But, yeah, so that's going to be some of the deeper mysteries of the Aether and the Aetheros. Exactly where it comes from, what, why, and what they are. Are they really... Because a lot of etheric entities are non-corporeal, and then you're also going to have entities that are corporeal, and then you have some that will affect people, like a werewolf or a vampire, or that sort of thing. But the question is that the same person anymore, or is it just something else riding their body, essentially?
Man.
Love it, absolutely love it.
You're giving me a lot to think about here, Ian. I'm reconsidering my whole life right now. It's just getting real. Yeah, and then, so we talked about the lore, we talked about the system, we talked about your inspiration even. So this game currently, is there a released... Because, I've seen a quick start, and I've been showing bits of it here. Is that available for everyone to get?
It will be. It will be by beginning of next week. It will hopefully, if all goes well, be up on RPG. It will also be on our website. It should be available through our website, or I'll have a link to Drive-Thru, one way or the other. So yes, absolutely. If you join the mailing list on our website, I've promised to send one out. I forget what date it was cut off for that, but I've promised to email one directly to you. So all you got to do, if you want one, just go to our website and join the mailing list, and you will get one as soon as it's ready. Beyond that, the Kickstarter pre-launch is live, but it's still in the pre-launch. But you can follow that so you know exactly when it happens. This is the first time I've been anywhere actually talking about it, and the first time publicly I've said what month the release is going to be, which it will be October.
That seems appropriate given the setting.
Very appropriate, yeah.
But it worked out for a number of reasons, but it also, yes. So yeah, the Kickstarter will be in October, but you can go to the pre-launch page and follow it there, so you'll get a notification.
I shared the link in the Twitch chat. I will also be adding it to the notes of this video, so you can go check that out. yeah, go to the website, click the thing, do all that good stuff, and support Ian and his wonderful game Nevermore. Man, where does the time go? So many. I can sit here and talk to you forever. About,
we can do it again.
We can do it again for sure. Anything else you want to say about Nevermore at all?
I think I've kind of talked a lot about it. If anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. But I don't have anything much more that I need to get into details on.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to say them in the chat in the next few minutes here. We'll pass them along. Also, you can always at us on Twitter. You can go. It's at do you do at the Ian Lemke as your like?
I have no idea what it is.
Or do you want them to go to at Neppin the Games?
Probably Nepenthe Games.
Nepenthe Games. So you can go at Nepenthe Games on Twitter as well to shoot questions that way if you want to ask them later and you're watching the video on demand at a later date. I know Vampire Bites. So you got any questions, Vampire Bites? They've been a real good sport. They've been talking the whole time about. They already signed up for the pre-release page. They're all excited about it. Good friend of the show. But
they were also a fan of the name Nevermore. They said the name Nevermore sold them because they were like, "Oh, is that a Poe TTRPG? I'm in."
Yeah.
So more icing on the cake. Yeah, everybody is. I think we're all big fans of the name.
Definitely. I can't do it anymore. But in 5th grade, we actually were supposed to recite a poem, in front of class, and most people had these 2 stanza poems or whatever, and I actually did the Raven.
Yeah.
I spent like a week memorizing it. I just kept going over it again and again and again.
That's awesome. See, so that inspiration that's from way back. That inspiration's been in your head since you were a kid.
Yeah, it's deep.
You've been a Poe head since the young days.
I bet there's something, I guess, relax, something you get off your chest, right? Something relaxing, almost therapeutic to be able to write all about that Poe stuff that you've had in your head your entire life and put it in a tabletop game. Because that's probably been eating at the back of your mind for the better part of 20 years now from game design.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying. I mean, other than Changeling, because, fairies were my other big obsession when I was a kid. My dad had a copy of Brian Froud's Fairies when I was really young. And I read that thing cover to cover over and over and over again till it was dog-eared. But and just in general, just loved fairy stories. And so getting to work on, when I first saw fairy advertised in the back of Vampire, I was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Then got changed to Changeling.
Man, Changeling opened up my that was the game where I finally figured out how to actually role play. That one got me. I finally figured out how to do it.
Awesome. But I was a kid still when I wrote it.
Yeah.
Some of those good, fresh ideas to bring to game design. Stuff that no one had ever put on paper before.
I don't know, maybe. Or I was just a dumb 25-year-old.
Little column A, little column B.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vampire Bites is just excited for the Kickstarter and the Quick Start, and they can't wait to preview the game on Fresh Out the Box. Yeah, so I guess that's it for Nevermore. Thank you so much for being here with bringing your game. We're the first to get to kind of look at it. We're honored to do so. And man, oh man, did it exceed expectations. It sounds like a real winner here, Ian. And yeah, I've been Johananon at Rockfact on Twitter.
It's me, Casualty CDG. If you like tabletop role-playing games, check out Jahan and I every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday from 8 p.m. until 11 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you like movies, streaming shows, and video games, check out our podcast, Fresh Out the Podcast. There's a brand new episode every single Sunday, and we try to keep up to date with current things and what you should be spending your time watching according to us.
And we're shouldn't be.
Yeah, or shouldn't be spending your time. Yeah, there are lots of things I don't like Don't go see the past Jurassic Park movie in theaters. Just don't do it.
Let's wait for it to come. It's garbage.
Yeah. Everyone has a magic hand that can stop dinosaurs. Thanks for being with us, and tune in. We love you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure, Ian. Stay fresh, everybody.